1 year after the surrender, Admiral Zextar stood on the observation deck of the human orbital station above Hegemony Prime. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he could see the planet below undergoing the most dramatic transformation in its history. Where once military installations had covered entire continents, now vast parks and cultural centers were taking shape. The gray utilitarian architecture of the hegemony was being replaced by structures that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, blending advanced technology with natural beauty in ways that the former empire had never imagined possible. "It's remarkable," he said to Admiral Chen, who stood beside him watching the reconstruction efforts. "I never thought I would live to see Hegemony Prime look like this." "Beauty was never a priority for your empire," she replied, but without malice. Over the past year, their relationship had evolved from adversaries to something approaching friendship. Function, efficiency, intimidation. Those were the design principles, and now the Krell people get to decide what their world should look like, what their culture should become. For the first time in centuries, they're free to choose their own path. Below them, teams of humans and former hegemony citizens worked together on the reconstruction projects. Advanced fabrication systems could create entire buildings in hours, but the humans insisted on involving local populations in the planning and construction process. "Why?" Zextar asked. It was a question that had been troubling him for months. Why go to such lengths to help the species that oppressed you? Why not simply rule in our place? Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching a group of Krell children playing in a newly constructed park. "Because that's what you would have done, and we learned a long time ago that becoming like our enemies was the same thing as letting them win. But surely some of your people wanted revenge. After what we did to Earth, after centuries of exile and struggle, there must have been those who demanded we pay in kind." Of course there were. Rage was what drove us for the first 100 years. The desire for vengeance gave us the strength to survive when everything seemed hopeless. She turned to face him. "But rage makes a poor foundation for a civilization. At some point we had to decide what we were building toward, not just what we were fighting against." Through the station's communication system, reports continued to flow in from across the former hegemony territory. The transformation wasn't limited to the core worlds. On planets throughout the galaxy, liberation fleets were working with local populations to rebuild societies that had been suppressed for generations. "The Zephyrian homeworld has completed its first free election in 2 centuries, announced the duty officer. "Preliminary results show a 94% turnout rate. The new planetary council is requesting membership in the Galactic Confederation. That makes 47 worlds that have chosen to join," Admiral Chen noted. 17 others have opted for complete independence, and 12 are still deciding. "And the Krell homeworld?" "The referendum is next month. Current polling suggests a close vote between Confederation membership and independence." Zextar nodded. The idea that his people might choose their own future, without outside pressure or manipulation, was still strange to him. The hegemony had made every decision for its member species, believing that central authority was the only way to maintain order. "Admiral," he said carefully, "I've been meaning to ask you about something. The dimensional gateway system you've been constructing. Our scientists still can't understand how it works." "Pocket universe technology," she replied simply. "We've learned to create stable dimensional spaces that exist parallel to normal reality. The gateways connect these pocket universes, allowing instantaneous travel across any distance. That should be impossible. The energy requirements alone would be impossible using matter-based energy generation, yes. But when you learn to tap directly into the fundamental forces that hold reality together, energy becomes unlimited." Zextar struggled to comprehend the implications. "You're saying you've learned to harness the power of existence itself?" "In a very limited way, yes. It took us nearly 2 centuries to develop the theoretical framework, and another 50 years to build the first working prototype. And you're sharing this technology with everyone?" "Eventually. The Gateway Network will be controlled by the Confederation Council, with representatives from every member world. No single species will ever again have the power to dominate others simply because they possess superior technology." A soft chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. The main display activated to show Admiral Webb, now serving as the Confederation's military coordinator. "Chen, we've got a situation developing in the Outer Rim territories. The hegemony remnant forces under General Vorthak have seized control of 3 mining worlds and declared themselves the true hegemony. Admiral Chen sighed. They had been expecting this. Despite the surrender of high command, some hegemony officers had refused to accept the new reality. Strength of his forces? 2 battle groups, approximately 60 ships. He's threatening to execute civilian populations if we attempt to intervene. And the local populations? Mixed. Some species are supporting him out of fear, others are calling for liberation. It's a mess. Zextar felt a familiar chill. This was exactly the kind of situation that had led to countless atrocities during the hegemony's reign. General Vorthak is unstable. He was responsible for the complete sterilization of the Corvani system when they attempted to rebel. If he's threatening civilians, he'll follow through. Admiral Chen nodded grimly. Marcus, I want you to take the 5th Fleet and position them at the edge of the system. Do not engage unless I give direct authorization. Chen, if we wait too long, I'm not planning to wait. I'm planning to try something different. She turned to Zextar. Admiral, I have a proposition for you. You know Vorthak personally, you understand his psychology. Would you be willing to serve as an envoy? You want me to negotiate with him? Zextar was stunned. Admiral, I surrendered to you a year ago. Many hegemony officers consider me a traitor. Vorthak would likely execute me on sight. Maybe. Or maybe he would listen to someone who's seen what we're actually building here. Someone who can tell him that surrender isn't defeat. It's transformation. Zextar looked out at the world below, where his people were learning to build something beautiful instead of something fearsome. Children who had never known war were playing in gardens that existed because former enemies had chosen to help, rather than hurt. If I do this, he said slowly, and if Vorthak refuses to listen, what happens then? Admiral Chen's expression hardened slightly. Then we do whatever is necessary to protect those civilians. The age of conquest is over, Admiral, but that doesn't mean we've forgotten how to fight when fighting is necessary. And if I can convince him, then 60 ships full of hegemony personnel get the same choice everyone else has gotten. They can help build the new galaxy, or they can return to their homes and live in peace. Zextar made his decision. I'll go, but I want to take something with me. What? A recording of this conversation, and recordings of the reconstruction efforts here. If Vorthak is going to make a choice, he should understand exactly what he's choosing between. Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time since he'd known her, it was a smile without any trace of the old war behind it. Admiral, I think you're going to do just fine in the new galaxy we're building. As Zextar prepared for what might be his final mission, he reflected on the impossible journey that had brought him here. A year ago, he had been a servant of an empire built on domination and fear. Today, he was an ambassador for something entirely different, a galaxy where strength served justice, where technology served life, and where former enemies could become partners in building something better than either could achieve alone. The humans had indeed replaced the hegemony, but they had replaced it with something no one could have imagined. Hope. The hour passed like a lifetime. Admiral Zextar stood before the Grand Council of the Hegemony, the ruling body that had governed the Empire for 3 centuries. Around the circular chamber, representatives from the core species debated frantically, their voices echoing off the crystalline walls. We cannot simply surrender, roared Councillor Vexmorth, his reptilian features flushed with anger. The hegemony has never yielded to any enemy. To do so now would be to betray everything we have built. And what exactly have we built? Countered Councillor Yathara, her insectoid compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. An empire held together by fear and brutality? Is that really worth preserving? The debate had been raging since Zextar's report to the council. Some members demanded immediate military action, calling for the deployment of their most devastating weapons. Others argued for negotiation, seeking some middle ground that might preserve their authority while appeasing the human demands. The reports from our fleet commanders are unanimous, Zextar said, cutting through the arguments. Human technology is beyond anything in our databases. They're not just superior to us. They're operating on principles of physics we don't understand. Every engagement has resulted in complete defeat for our forces. Surely you're not suggesting that a species we destroyed centuries ago has somehow become more advanced than our entire empire, demanded Councillor Krelnox. I'm suggesting that we underestimated them catastrophically. The humans didn't just survive our assault on their homeworld. They used it as motivation to become something we never anticipated. Chief Science Advisor Chintel activated a holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports. Counselors based on our analysis of human technology. They appear to have mastered dimensional manipulation, quantum mechanics beyond our comprehension, and energy generation on a scale that defies current scientific understanding. Their smallest vessels generate more power than our largest battle stations. How is that possible? Asked Counselor Yathara. We believe they've achieved something we always considered theoretical: perfect matter-energy conversion. Their ships essentially have unlimited power sources. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony's military advantage had always been based on superior firepower and overwhelming numbers. Against an enemy with essentially unlimited energy, those advantages meant nothing. There's something else, Zextar continued. Our monitoring stations are detecting massive structures emerging from dimensional rifts near the galactic core. Analysis suggests they're constructing some kind of permanent gateway system. The holographic display changed to show deep space sensor readings. Massive geometric structures, each one larger than a moon, were materializing in empty space. Energy readings from these constructions were off every scale the hegemony possessed. They're not just planning to defeat us, Zextar realized aloud. They're planning to replace our entire infrastructure with something of their own design. Before anyone could respond, emergency alerts began flashing throughout the chamber. The main display activated automatically, showing Admiral Chen aboard her flagship. Grand Council of the Hegemony, she said without preamble. Your hour has expired. I am now transmitting the surrender terms to your personal systems. You have 10 minutes to accept them before we begin final operations. Counselor Vexmorth stood angrily. Human, we do not negotiate with terrorists. The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 3 centuries, and we will not be dictated to by the descendants of a primitive species we rightfully conquered. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Counselor Vexmorth, species designation, Draknari, homeworld, Drakmor Prime, conquered by hegemony forces in standard year 2847. Original population, 14.7 billion. Current population of pure Draknari bloodline, 847,000. Your species was reduced to less than 1% of its original numbers through forced assimilation and genetic suppression programs. The chamber fell silent. The human admiral continued with mechanical precision. Counselor Yathara, species designation, Zethani, homeworld, cluster 94 Gamma, conquered in standard year 2756. Your species was selected for integration into hegemony power structures, specifically because your natural hive mind tendencies made you easy to control and manipulate. She turned to each council member in turn, reciting facts about their species' conquest and subjugation that even they had forgotten. When she finished, the silence in the chamber was absolute. You see, counselors, we don't just have military records from your empire. We have complete historical archives from every species you conquered. We know exactly what you took from each world, each culture, each civilization, and we know what you owe them. What do you want from us? Counselor Yathara asked quietly. Immediate cessation of all military operations, withdrawal of hegemony forces from all conquered territories, dismantling of your weapons of mass destruction, and most importantly, acknowledgement of what your empire really was, a parasite that fed on the destruction of other civilizations. And in return you get to live. Your core worlds will be left to govern themselves. Your people will be free to rebuild their society without the need to dominate others. Some of you may even choose to join the new Galactic Confederation we're establishing. Counselor Vexmorth spoke through gritted teeth. And if we refuse? The display screen split, showing views from human fleets positioned throughout the galaxy. At each location, weapons were powering up, creating energy signatures that made stars look dim by comparison. Then we will demonstrate why humanity was chosen by the universe to replace you. Admiral Chen said simply. The age of conquest is over, counselors. The age of cooperation is beginning. You can be part of that future, or you can be remembered as the empire that chose extinction over evolution. A new voice cut into the transmission. It belonged to a Krell military officer, but the background behind him showed a human ship's bridge. Grand Council, this is Fleet Admiral Korthak. I am currently aboard the human flagship Vindication as their guest. I have seen their technology firsthand. I have witnessed demonstrations of their capabilities. Counselors, we are not just outmatched. We are obsolete. Korthak? Zextar leaned forward. Are you under duress? I am being treated with more respect than I deserve, considering what I've done in service to the hegemony. Admiral Chen has shown me records of battles I fought, worlds I conquered, species I helped destroy. She's also shown me what those worlds look like now that they've been liberated. The display changed to show planetary surfaces that had been transformed. Cities were being rebuilt using advanced technology that seemed to blend seamlessly with natural environments. Species that had been forced into slavery were working together on massive reconstruction projects. This is the former Altarian homeworld, Korthak continued. I personally led the fleet that conquered it 80 years ago. I watched their cities burn. Today, I watch their children playing in parks that exist because the humans gave them the technology to rebuild everything we destroyed. Impossible, Counselor Vexmorth whispered. The resources required for such reconstruction would bankrupt an entire sector. That's what I thought too, Korthak replied. Until I learned that human technology allows them to convert matter into energy and back again at will. They can literally create whatever resources they need from basic elements. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. Counselors, you have 5 minutes remaining to make your decision. I want to be clear about something. This is not revenge. Revenge would be doing to your worlds what you did to Earth. This is justice. This is giving every species in this galaxy the chance to determine their own future. And if we surrender? Asked Counselor Yathara. Then tomorrow begins the largest reconstruction project in galactic history. We will help every world rebuild what was lost. We will restore languages, cultures, and traditions that your empire tried to erase. We will create a galaxy where strength serves justice instead of oppressing it. Admiral Zexitar looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. On their faces he saw the same realization that had been growing in his own mind. The empire they had served, the civilization they had believed in, had been built on the suffering of others. And now, impossibly, their victims had returned not just to defeat them, but to offer them something they had never shown anyone else. A second chance. High Command's response to Fleet Admiral Korthak's emergency transmission was swift and decisive. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in hegemony history was underway. Battle groups from across the Empire began converging on the core systems. While defense platforms came online around every major world, Admiral Zextar stood in the Strategic Planning Center aboard the Orbital Command Station above Hegemony Prime. Watching holographic displays show the movement of over 3,000 warships toward their position, it should have been reassuring. Instead, he felt a growing sense of dread. Admiral, reported Commander Yilnex from the Intelligence Section, our deep space monitors are detecting additional human fleets emerging from dimensional rifts across 17 different sectors. They're not all heading for the core systems. Zextar turned from the display. Where are they going? Former colony worlds of conquered species. Worlds that were absorbed into the hegemony decades ago. It's like they have detailed records of our entire expansion history. The implications were staggering. The humans weren't just launching a single strike at the heart of the hegemony. They were systematically targeting every world that had been taken by conquest, every species that had been enslaved or eliminated. How many fleets are we tracking? 47 separate human formations, each one consisting of between 50 and 200 vessels. Admiral, their total fleet strength appears to be larger than our own. This was impossible. The hegemony had spent 3 centuries building the largest military force in galactic history. How could a supposedly extinct species have secretly constructed a fleet that matched their numbers? Sir, called another voice from across the chamber. We're receiving transmission requests from human fleets at multiple locations. They all want to speak with High Command directly. Route them through. I want to hear what they have to say. The main communication screen activated, showing a split display with multiple human commanders. Each one was different in appearance, but they all shared the same cold determination that Admiral Chen had displayed. Hegemony High Command, spoke a graying human male with scars across his face. I am Admiral Marcus Webb, commanding the Liberation Fleet at the former Zephyrian homeworld. I'm calling to offer the civilian population here a chance to evacuate before we begin liberation operations. Another human, a woman with cybernetic implants covering half her head, added, Admiral Rosa Martinez, commanding at the former Altarian system. We're prepared to accept the surrender of all hegemony forces in this sector, but we will not tolerate any attempts to use civilian populations as shields. One by one, the human commanders introduced themselves and made their demands. Each fleet was positioned at a world that had been conquered by the hegemony, and each one was offering the same choice: surrender or face the consequences. "This is Admiral Zextar of Hegemony High Command," he finally responded. "What you're proposing amounts to the complete dissolution of our empire. We cannot simply abandon systems that have been under our protection for generations." Admiral Webb's expression didn't change. "Protection? Admiral, we have complete records of what the hegemony calls protection. Strip mining of planetary resources, forced relocation of native populations, cultural suppression programs, and systematic elimination of any species that shows signs of independence. Those are necessary measures for maintaining order across such a vast territory," Zextar protested. But even as he said it, the words felt hollow. "Order built on fear and oppression," Admiral Martinez replied. "We're here to offer these worlds something different. Freedom to govern themselves, freedom to rebuild their cultures, freedom to exist without living in terror of their supposed protectors. And you think you can simply waltz in and undo 3 centuries of galactic civilization?" Zextar's anger was rising now. "You think these worlds will welcome you as liberators? Many of the species you're claiming to help have been fully integrated into hegemony society. They are citizens of our empire now." A new voice joined the conversation, this one belonging to a younger human woman whose ship appeared to be orbiting a massive industrial world. "Admiral Zextar, I'm Captain Elena Vasquez. Before you dismiss our claims, perhaps you should ask the citizens of these worlds what they actually want." The screen changed to show feeds from the surface of multiple planets. On each one, crowds were gathering in city centers, not in panic but in celebration. Signs were being held up written in languages that had been banned under hegemony rule. Ancient cultural symbols were being displayed openly for the first time in generations. "Impossible," Zextar breathed. "Our intelligence networks would have detected organized resistance movements." "There's a lot your intelligence networks missed," Admiral Chen's voice cut in as she joined the conference. "Did you really think that destroying a species' military and government would erase their desire for freedom? Did you believe that forcing them to speak your language and follow your laws would make them forget who they used to be?" The feeds from the planetary surfaces continued to show celebrations growing larger by the hour. On some worlds, hegemony administrative buildings were being surrounded by peaceful protesters demanding the immediate withdrawal of occupation forces. "Admiral Chen," Zextar said carefully, "even if what you claim is true, even if some populations welcome your intervention, you cannot possibly govern thousands of worlds effectively. The logistics alone would be impossible." "We're not planning to govern them, Admiral. We're planning to help them govern themselves. Every world will be given the choice to join a new galactic confederation based on cooperation rather than domination, or to remain independent if they prefer." "Naive idealism," Zextar scoffed. "Without central authority, without the strength to maintain order, these worlds will descend into chaos and warfare within generations." Admiral Webb leaned forward on his screen. "Admiral, let me ask you something. In 3 centuries of hegemony rule, how many major rebellions have you had to suppress? I don't see how that's relevant. Answer the question. How many species have tried to break free from your empire?" Zextar hesitated. The truth was uncomfortable. "There have been numerous incidents requiring military intervention. Hundreds," Admiral Martinez said flatly. "We've studied your records. Hundreds of rebellions, uprisings, and resistance movements. All brutally crushed. All proof that your subjects were never willing participants in your empire. And yet you offer them something different," Zextar said. "What makes you think your approach will work any better than ours?" The human admirals exchanged glances across their screens before Admiral Chen answered. "Because we learned from the best teachers in the galaxy, Admiral. We learned from you. We learned that force without justice creates nothing but hatred. We learned that strength without compassion builds nothing lasting. Most importantly, we learned that true power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to create and protect." "Pretty words," Zextar replied. "But words don't win wars." "No," Admiral Chen said quietly. "They don't. But they do win the peace that comes after. And Admiral, whether you realize it or not, this war is already over." On cue, alerts began flashing across every display in the command center. Emergency signals from hegemony fleets across the Empire, all reporting the same thing. Human vessels appearing without warning, making demands for immediate surrender, demonstrating weapons technology that made resistance futile. Admiral Zextar, Admiral Chen continued, "You have 1 hour to contact every hegemony commander and order them to stand down. Any attempt to fight will result in the complete destruction of your forces. Any attempt to harm civilian populations will result in consequences you cannot imagine. And if we comply, then you and your people will be offered the same choice as everyone else. You can return to your homeworld and rebuild your society based on cooperation instead of conquest. Or you can join the new confederation and help build something better than the empire you're losing today." The transmission ended, leaving Zextar alone with the weight of an impossible decision. Around him, his staff waited for orders that would determine the fate of the greatest empire in galactic history. The rift in space expanded like a wound in reality itself. Through it came ships unlike anything in hegemony records. They were clearly human in design, sharing the angular, brutal aesthetic of the first vessel. But each one was different. Some were massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even Korthak's flagship. Others were smaller, more maneuverable craft that moved with predatory grace. "Count?" Korthak demanded, his voice steady despite the impossibility unfolding before him. 50, 70, 100 vessels and still emerging. Brindar reported, her voice rising with each number. "Fleet Admiral, some of these ships are reading as larger than our battle stations." The human fleet arranged itself with mechanical precision, each ship taking a position that created overlapping fields of fire. But what truly disturbed Korthak was how familiar their formation looked. It was based on classic hegemony tactics but improved, refined, perfected. "They've been studying us," he realized aloud. The communication channel crackled to life again. This time the voice was different, human, but unfiltered by translation software. It spoke in perfect Krell, with the accent of someone who had spent decades studying their language. "Fleet Admiral Korthak, I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the Human Liberation Fleet. I want you to understand something very clearly. Every ship in my fleet was built in hidden shipyards using materials salvaged from the wreckage of our world. Every weapon system was designed by studying captured hegemony technology. Every tactical formation was learned from the battles you fought against species that no longer exist." Korthak activated his personal recorder. This conversation would become historical record, assuming any of them survived to deliver it. "Admiral Chen, your fleet is impressive, but you cannot hope to match the full might of the hegemony. We command 10,000 systems, we have millions of warships." "Yes, I'm aware. I'm also aware that your empire is built on fear and overwhelming force applied to smaller, weaker opponents. You've never faced an enemy that matched your technology. You've certainly never faced one that surpassed it." On the tactical display, energy readings from the human ships continued climbing beyond what hegemony sensors believed possible. Each vessel was generating power equivalent to a small star. "Admiral Chen, what do you want?" The pause that followed stretched for long seconds. When the human admiral spoke again, her voice carried the weight of centuries of grief and rage. "I want you to experience what you taught us. I want you to understand what it feels like to watch everything you've built burn around you. But first I want you to know exactly what you created when you tried to destroy humanity. The largest human ship, a massive construct that seemed to be built around a central core of pure energy, began broadcasting on all frequencies. What came through wasn't words, but images. Video recordings that showed the orbital bombardment of Earth, cities burning, continents cracking under the assault of hegemony weapons. But then the recordings changed. They showed human survivors digging through the ruins, finding fragments of crashed hegemony ships. They showed desperate scientists working in underground laboratories trying to understand alien technology. They showed children being born in hidden colonies, raised with one purpose, preparing for the day they could return. 237 years. Admiral Chen's voice continued over the images. 34 generations of humans raised with the knowledge that their species had been nearly exterminated. 34 generations taught that they were the last hope for justice in a galaxy ruled by predators. The images showed the gradual development of human technology. Early attempts to copy hegemony designs that failed catastrophically. Breakthrough discoveries that allowed them to understand the fundamental principles behind alien science. The first successful human starships, crude and ugly, but functional. And then the images showed something that made Korthak's blood run cold. Human fleets attacking isolated hegemony outposts, studying their defensive systems, capturing their personnel for interrogation. The attacks were surgical, precise, designed to gather information rather than inflict damage. "You've been preparing," he said. "We've been evolving. Every hegemony species you conquered became extinct or absorbed into your empire. Humans chose a different path. We became something you never expected. And what is that? We became you, but better." The demonstration began without warning. One of the smaller human ships accelerated toward the hegemony formation, moving faster than physics should allow. Korthak's ships opened fire with everything they had: plasma beams, gravity cannons, antimatter torpedoes, energy weapons that could shatter moons. Every shot missed. Not because the human ship evaded them, but because the weapons simply passed through empty space where the ship had been microseconds before. "Quantum displacement technology," Caltech whispered in amazement. "They're existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." The human ship reached the center of the hegemony formation and simply stopped. For a moment it hung in space surrounded by 200 enemy vessels, all of them firing continuously. Then it began to glow. "All ships, emergency retreat," Korthak ordered, but it was too late. The explosion wasn't nuclear or antimatter or any form of energy the hegemony understood. It was a controlled dimensional collapse, a weapon that turned space-time itself into a destructive force. 30 hegemony ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but removed from reality itself. The human ship rematerialized outside the blast zone completely undamaged. "That was a demonstration," Admiral Chen announced calmly. "One ship, one weapon, 30 of your finest vessels. Now imagine what my entire fleet can do." Korthak stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he had just witnessed. In 3 centuries of conquest, the hegemony had never lost 30 ships in a single engagement. This one human vessel had just eliminated them as easily as swatting insects. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. "Terms?" "Fleet Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation. This isn't a negotiation. This is the beginning of the end of your empire. My fleet isn't here to make deals with you. We're here to take back what you stole from every species you destroyed." More human ships were emerging from the dimensional rift, larger and more advanced than the first wave. In the distance, Korthak could see massive structures that looked like mobile space stations, each one bristling with weapon systems that defied comprehension. "Admiral Chen, if you attack the hegemony core worlds, you'll be responsible for the deaths of trillions of innocent civilians." The human admiral's response was cold and immediate. "Innocent? Fleet Admiral, your empire was built on genocide. Your core worlds are populated by the descendants of conquerors. Your innocent civilians live in luxury built on the bones of destroyed civilizations." Her voice hardened. "But unlike you, we remember that vengeance without purpose is just cruelty. The hegemony will fall, but it will be replaced with something better. And if we refuse to surrender, then you'll discover why humanity survived when 67 other species didn't. You'll learn why we spent over 2 centuries preparing for this day, instead of simply accepting extinction like you expected us to." The human fleet began moving forward, their impossible ships cutting through space like knives through reality itself. And behind them, the dimensional rift continued to expand, revealing glimpses of a human civilization that had grown beyond anything the hegemony could have imagined. Fleet Admiral Korthak arrived ahead of schedule, his massive dreadnought Eternal Conquest dropping out of hyperspace with a flash of blue energy. Behind him came 200 of the hegemony's finest warships, each one capable of reducing a planet to ash. Zextar met the Fleet Admiral in the war room, where holographic displays showed the continuing movement of the unknown vessel. Korthak was an imposing figure even among the naturally large Krell. Battle scars crossed his exoskeleton, and his eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had never lost a military engagement. "Show me everything," Korthak commanded without preamble. For the next hour, Zextar presented all available data: sensor readings, failed intercept attempts, trajectory analysis, and the disturbing revelation about ancient navigation routes. Korthak listened in silence, occasionally manipulating the holographic displays to examine specific details. "You believe this vessel belongs to a species we conquered?" Korthak finally asked. "It's the only explanation that makes sense," Zextar replied. "The navigation knowledge, the apparent disregard for our authority, the advanced technology that seems designed specifically to counter our detection methods." "Which species?" "Unknown. Our conquest records go back 3 centuries, but there are gaps, especially regarding the species that put up the strongest resistance before we broke them." Korthak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The hegemony has always been thorough in its conquests. When we absorb a species, we take their technology, their knowledge, their ability to threaten us ever again. But you're suggesting someone escaped, or someone was thought dead who wasn't." Before Korthak could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Velnox's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, Fleet Admiral, priority alert. The vessel has changed course." They rushed back to the bridge where chaos greeted them. The tactical display showed the mysterious ship had suddenly accelerated, moving faster than before and heading directly for their position. "Time to intercept?" Korthak demanded. 11 minutes at current speed, Brindar reported, her voice tight with tension. "Battle stations, all ships, defensive formation Omega-7, charge all weapon systems." Korthak's orders went out across the fleet frequency. 200 warships began moving into position, creating overlapping fields of fire that could destroy anything known to exist. "Sir," Korthak called out, "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the approaching vessel. Whatever it's doing, it's drawing power levels equivalent to our entire fleet combined." "Impossible," Korthak growled. "Nothing that size could generate that much energy." On the main screen, space itself began to distort around the incoming vessel. Stars seemed to bend and twist as if reality was being manipulated on a fundamental level. "Fleet Admiral," came a transmission from one of the battleships. "My science officer is detecting dimensional fractures forming around the target. Whatever technology they're using, it's affecting space-time itself." Korthak had faced plasma cannons that could melt through battle armor, gravity weapons that crushed ships like paper, and energy beams that could slice through moon-sized asteroids. But he had never seen anything that could warp reality around itself. "Open a channel. All frequencies, maximum power." "Channel open, sir." Korthak stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of hegemony dominance. "Unknown vessel, you are trespassing in hegemony space. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire." For a moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was clearly artificial, translated through some kind of universal communication system, but there was something unsettlingly familiar about the underlying cadence. "Hegemony forces, this is the vessel Vindication. We are not trespassing. We are returning." The words sent chills through every Krell on the bridge. "Not trespassing. Returning." "Returning from where?" Korthak demanded. "What species are you? What is your point of origin?" Another pause. When the voice spoke again, there was something almost amused about its tone. "We are human. Our point of origin is Earth, a planet you destroyed 237 years ago. We are the descendants of the survivors you thought you had eliminated." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Zextar frantically searched through the historical databases looking for any reference to a species called human or a world called Earth. "Sir," he said quietly, "I found it. Conquest Record 2387. A primitive world in the Outer Rim territories. Initial resistance was minimal. The planet was subjected to orbital bombardment and marked as completely pacified. No survivors reported. Yet here they are," Korthak said grimly. He activated the fleet channel. "All ships maintain defensive positions but do not fire unless I give the direct order. If these humans have survived for over 2 centuries and developed this level of technology, we need to understand what we're facing." On screen, the human vessel continued its approach, space continuing to bend around it in ways that violated every principle of physics the hegemony understood. "Human vessel Vindication," Korthak transmitted. "If your species was conquered and your world destroyed, How do you possess technology far beyond anything in hegemony databases? The response came immediately, and this time there was no mistaking the cold anger underneath the artificial translation. You taught us that strength is the only truth in this galaxy. You showed us that mercy is weakness and compromise is defeat. For 2 centuries, the survivors of Earth have been learning that lesson. We have been building, growing, becoming something you never imagined possible. And what is that? Your replacement. The dimensional distortions around the human ship suddenly intensified. On every sensor screen, impossible readings began appearing. The single vessel was somehow generating energy signatures that matched their entire fleet. Fleet Admiral, the tactical officer called out, I'm reading massive power buildups throughout their ship. Whatever weapons they have, they're charging them now. Korthak looked at the tactical display showing 200 hegemony warships against a single human vessel. By all logic, this should be a massacre in the hegemony's favor. But the energy readings, the impossible technology, and the confident tone of the human commander suggested otherwise. Human vessel, you are outnumbered 200 to 1. Whatever grudge you hold against the hegemony, this is not the way to resolve it. Stand down and we can discuss terms. The human voice came back one final time, and now there was no mistaking the deadly intent behind the words. Fleet Admiral Korthak, your species believes that might makes right, that the strong have the natural right to dominate the weak. Today, you will learn what happens when someone stronger returns to collect what you owe them. This is not a negotiation. This is a reckoning. The dimensional distortions around the human ship reached a crescendo, and then something impossible happened. Reality itself seemed to split open around the vessel, revealing glimpses of a space that existed beyond normal physics. And through that rift, more ships began to emerge. Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion's Will, watching the stars through the massive viewport. For 300 years, the hegemony had ruled this galaxy with an iron fist. No species had ever challenged their might. No ship had ever escaped their detection networks. No enemy had ever surprised them, until today. Admiral, came the nervous voice of Communications Officer Velnox. We're receiving reports from across all sectors. Every monitoring station, every patrol fleet, every border outpost is reporting the same thing. Zextar's 4 eyes narrowed. The hegemony controlled over 10,000 star systems, with surveillance networks that could detect a grain of sand moving at sublight speeds. What exactly are they reporting, officer? An unknown vessel, sir. Moving faster than anything in our databases. It appears on our sensors for mere seconds before vanishing again. No energy signature we recognize. No hull configuration that matches any known species. The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in frustration. His species, the Krell, had conquered 67 different alien races to build this empire. They knew every ship design, every technology, every possible threat in their territory. Show me the data. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a 3-dimensional map of hegemony space. Red dots appeared and disappeared across the display like fireflies in the night. Each dot represented a sensor contact with the mysterious vessel. It's moving in a straight line, observed Tactical Officer Brindar, her voice filled with confusion, directly toward the core systems. At its current speed, it will reach the capital world in 72 hours. Zextar studied the pattern. The ship wasn't following trade routes or avoiding patrol zones. It wasn't behaving like a scout or spy vessel. It was moving with the confidence of something that didn't fear discovery. Has it responded to any hails? Negative, sir. All frequencies attempted. No response on any known communication protocols. What about intercept courses? Surely some of our patrol fleets have gotten close enough for visual confirmation. Velnox's skin changed to a pale blue, a sign of extreme anxiety in his species. That's the problem, Admiral. 3 separate fleets have attempted intercept. The vessel simply disappears when they get within 50,000 kilometers. Not cloaking, not jumping to hyperspace. It just stops being there. This was impossible. The hegemony had mastered every known form of faster-than-light travel. They understood jump drives, fold space technology, quantum tunneling, and dimensional shifting. Nothing could move through their space undetected, and certainly nothing could simply vanish from existence. Pull up the visual recordings from Outpost Gamma 7. They had the closest encounter. The screen changed to show grainy footage from a border monitoring station. At first, there was nothing but empty space and distant stars. Then, for exactly 2.7 seconds, something appeared in the frame. Zextar leaned forward, studying the image. The vessel was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It wasn't sleek like hegemony ships. all curves and flowing lines designed for maximum efficiency. It wasn't brutish like the war vessels of the conquered species, built for intimidation and raw power. Instead, it looked almost primitive. Angular with hard edges and what appeared to be armor plating. Strange protrusions jutted from various points on the hull. Most disturbing of all, it seemed to have no visible engine systems, no energy emissions that should be powering such incredible speed. Analysis? He demanded. Chief Science Officer Caltech manipulated the holographic display, highlighting different sections of the mysterious ship. Length approximately 800 meters. Mass readings are inconsistent with the size, suggesting either extremely dense materials or some form of mass manipulation technology we don't understand. No thermal signature, no radiation emissions, no quantum disturbance patterns. That's scientifically impossible, Brindar interjected. Any vessel moving at those speeds should be creating massive gravitational waves, dimensional rifts, something our sensors could track. Yet there it is, Caltech replied dryly. Moving through our space as if our laws of physics are merely suggestions. Zextar turned to his communications officer. Send a message to High Command. Priority 1. Unknown vessel approaching core systems. Conventional intercept impossible. Request authorization for Level 7 response protocols. The bridge fell silent. Level 7 protocols hadn't been used in over a century. They involved mobilizing the entire hegemony fleet, activating every defense platform in the core systems, and preparing for potential system-wide evacuation. Sir, Velnok said quietly, are you certain? Level 7 is reserved for extinction-level threats. Look at that data again, officer. This vessel has crossed half our territory in 18 hours. It's demonstrated technology we can't understand, can't track, and can't intercept. It's ignored every attempt at communication and shows no signs of changing course. Zextar's voice grew harder. In my experience, when something appears that makes your most advanced technology look primitive, you prepare for war. Minutes passed before the response came from High Command. The message was brief. Level 7 authorized. Fleet Admiral Korthak will arrive in 12 hours with the 3rd Battle Group. Do not engage until arrival. Zextar nodded grimly. Korthak was a legend among the Krell military, having personally led the campaigns that conquered the last free worlds. If anyone could deal with this mysterious threat, it was him. But as the Admiral watched the red dots continue their relentless march across the display toward the heart of the hegemony, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service: fear. Admiral, Caltech called out, his voice urgent. I'm detecting something else. The vessel's path isn't random. It's following old hyperspace routes, navigation markers that haven't been used for centuries. What do you mean? Before the hegemony established the current jump gate network, there were older routes through this region, paths used by the ancient civilizations we conquered and absorbed. This vessel is following those exact routes, as if it has access to historical navigation data from before our empire existed. Zextar felt his blood grow cold. Are you suggesting this vessel belongs to one of the extinct species? I'm suggesting, Admiral, that whoever built this ship knows our territory better than we do. They know where we've been, what we've conquered, and possibly where we're going. The implications hit everyone on the bridge simultaneously. This wasn't just an unknown vessel. This was something returning to reclaim what had once been theirs, and they were coming home with technology the hegemony couldn't comprehend.